Gigio Donnarumma is going to be leaving PSG, and this drama is not just today it started. This has been building up for several months, and I'm going to be giving you guys a detailed timeline of what is happening with Gigio Donnarumma, and then we are also then going to tie it into what are the possible scenarios that we are going to see come out of this, or what are my predictions to see where this situation is going to go for. So without further ado, before we get into it, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button before we get into it, so you guys do not miss anything that we do here on Pillar Sports. One thing is for sure, you are going to be getting the best information, and you are going to be understanding every single thing you need to know about Gigio Donnarumma leaving PSG. Without further ado, let's get this party started. Now, this isn't just a simple keeper makes mistake, club moves on story. It's a pivot in identity, politics, and power at PSG. Right after a season where Donnarumma was arguably at his peak, here is the full arc. What actually is driving it and where it's likely going to land next. This is a timeline of key moments about this situation, and I'm going to be paying you guys, breaking it down so you guys would understand based on the year and the key moments of what has happened. So it started in 2021. This was the arrival. And of course, it was Keylor Navas that was there. And that was where you saw Keylor Navas rupture. You understand? Donnarumma arrived after winning the Euro 2021 and immediately displaced Keylor Navas. Among PSG supporters, it felt ruthless. Now that ruthlessness has looped right back to Gigio Donnarumma, completing a full circle on this narrative arc at the club. In 2022, at the Bernabeu, this basically is where it started. There was an inflection. The error at the Santiago Bernabeu in PSG's 2022 Champions League collapse cemented a public critique of Donnarumma's distribution. Even as his shot stopping remained elite, the profile conversation began to simmer around his feet and decision-making under pressure. This was where the problem absolutely started. In 2025, this season is where we saw his peak as a goalkeeper. Then the philosophical turn absolutely kicked on. Donnarumma delivered a career-best campaign as PSG won their first Champions League 5 or 4-0 against Inter in May 31st, and later reached the Club World Cup final, where he was the central to the knockout stage in that run that defined Luis Enrique's treble-winning year. Yet, the seeds were planted for a stylistic shift in goal despite those heroics. Summer of 2025, Lucas Chevalier has arrived at Paris Saint-Germain, and in the subtext, Donnarumma would have to leave. PSG has signed Lucas Chevalier and explicitly, how do you pronounce that word? Explicitly, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Praised his excellent distribution skills. A dog whistle for goalkeeper profile Luis Enrique wants. Contract talks with Donnarumma that has been running for a very long time now became stalled. And the Chevalier move effectively telegraphed a change in number one. The truth about this situation is Luis Enrique wanted a goalkeeper that can start the play from the back, start the decision, starts playing well from the back, and that is not Donnarumma's forte, might I add. In August 12th of 2025, the rupture goes public. Donnarumma was excluded. Donnarumma was excluded from the UEFA Super Cup squad. Luis Enrique said he needs a different profile of a goalkeeper. While Donnarumma posted an emotional farewell stating he has been pushed out, Captain Marquinhos acknowledged the human cost while keeping the room sturdy. The aftermath of this situation is the pricing, the options, and the pressure that this is going to put on Chevalier. Because one thing is for sure, this situation has a lot more context, a lot more backroom talks that we are actually talking about. Reports are being framed, English clubs as the front runners to get Donnarumma's signature. Of course, PSG are hardened on what they want in for him services. The position basically is sell now rather than risk another star leaving for a free. And Donnarumma Riola has criticized PSG of how they handled this situation, and the figures in the press varied from the mid-20s millions to now around 50 million euros in a stance. For lack of a better term, PSG has basically changed their stance from something that they were looking for around 26 million euros, and now with Manchester City going in there and actually talking to them and saying how much would you need and what are the figures, now PSG are saying 50 million pounds. That's the crazy thing that Enzo Riola is absolutely angry about. I was just about to say Mino Raiola, but I don't know if these guys are the same, are brothers, but may his soul rest in peace. And the question is, why did this really happen? And we have to dig deep. We have to literally dig deep and forget about the headlines and go deep into the situation. A lot of people are going to be talking about the profile over the profile of goalkeeper in Chevalier over the pedigree that Donnarumma has already mounted in his career. Luis Enrique prioritized distribution and composure in the build-up play, right? Chevalier's unveiling ability to pass the ball through the back end, highlighting the likes of his passing, his aerial command, making the stylistic verdict explicitly, despite Donnarumma's elite shot stopping. In this situation, Luis Enrique has basically looked at the front of this and said, I believe that this makes us better. The idea, this profile of goalkeeper makes us better. While Donnarumma is a great shot stopper, he thinks Chevalier is going to be a better fit for the team all around. Now, this is something that should remind you of something that the mistake that Manchester United made. Manchester United got rid of David De Gea and went in for Andre Onana, a ball-playing goalkeeper. A ball-playing goalkeeper. A lot of people will say it's a mistake. And I would say that was a mistake because David De Gea was not the person that we needed to remove at that time. Yes, you might wanted to be playing a little bit from the back, but even when you brought Andre Onana, we never played that. And now let's keep back into now the contract control and the Mbappé scars has to come into play in this situation. PSG are determined to not relieve the optics and the value lost of a superstar living on a free. With the with Donnarumma contract ending in 2026 and no renewal in sight, they rather sell now, and even if it means moving on from a Champions League goalkeeper, they are okay with doing that. They just do not want to relieve what they went through with Kylian Mbappé. The optics, the symmetry of this situation, and the culture. PSG did this situation to Keylor Navas as they pushed him out for Donnarumma when he arrived. And all of a sudden, this is circling again. But this time, it's Chevalier that is coming in and they are pushing Donnarumma out. One thing is for sure. A lot of players watch the way clubs treat their players. And this sentiment, understanding is what PSG does to players, might affect them in the long run. It just might. And this is a problem I truly think that they need to focus on. Now with Chevalier, Safanov, and Tenas and the academy depth, PSG simply could not carry 5 senior goalkeepers. Someone had to go. And in the stylistic mismatch, plus the contract leverage, this decision has been made clean for the club. PSG are letting Donnarumma leave this summer. So the question has to be now, what is next for Gigi Donnarumma? What is the most realistic scenario for this talented of a 26-year-old goalkeeper? Bear in mind, a goalkeeper's prime usually starts at the late 20s, maybe in 29, 30 going forward. Manchester United, if I'm not mistaken, signed Van der Sar when he was 31, if I'm not mistaken. And we all know the legend that Van der Sar went on to be. Now, when it comes to the most realistic scenarios, let's start with Manchester City. This caveat is only if Ederson, the current goalkeeper at Manchester City, leaves. Now, the situation is that Galatasaray are looking to finalize a deal for Ederson. City become a live destination. Pep's long-standing admiration and budget capacity make this the cleanest plug and play for elite v elite. Ederson goes, of course we know Ederson is an elite goalkeeper, and another elite goalkeeper in Donnarumma comes in and takes his place. Several reports at this point has basically brought City's interest into the forefront. But that still has to be if Ederson goes to Turkey. Second most realistic scenario, Manchester United. This is also contingent on Andre Onana leaving the club. There is genuine interest, but high-level reporting notes it is unlikely unless Onana leaves Manchester United. You will see conflicting numbers on prices and ranges from roughly 26 million pounds reporting to 50 million euros valuations. Because PSG are testing the market against time, they need to understand what is the value of Donnarumma before the 20 days elapse, because they have to get rid of him before the season. If not, we are going to be looking at them struggling to get rid of him in January and him leaving on a free. That is what they do not want also. And then the third scenario is Chelsea. But this is an outside bet. This is something very, very concrete right now, linked to name value. But reporting suggests that they are not in active talks and feel responsibly set with Sanchez, Jorgensen, and Solina. Unless something breaks late, there is more smoke than fire with Chelsea on Donnarumma. And then we look at Bayern. Bayern is the last part of this situation, of this equation. This is essentially just a wait and walk dynamic. Bayern have already been mentioned in the reports. If no one meets PSG's axe, the hold and then in a free transfer in 2026 scenario then reopens. The pressure could be forced on a late window price correction or a winter move at a discount. In this sentence, basically, it's just an understanding that with what Bayern have in Neuer, there's really no need for them to get another goalkeeper right now because they just purchased a young goalkeeper this summer. But the truth about this situation is that an opportunity like Donnarumma arises, you have to be able to be in the market to take advantage of it. And in what I'm basically seeing in the reports, Bayern are okay and willing to tell Donnarumma, hey, just wait a second, wait a minute, wait till 2026 where we can come and give you the money that you want without paying anything to PSG. And that might just be very attractive to Donnarumma. Now, the underrated angles that no one is absolutely talking about, but we are going to be talking about here on Pillar Sports, is the distribution of the ripple effect, not just a goalkeeper swap. Chevalier's profile reshapes PSG's first phase, pressing from the back, the press resistance of Chevalier, right? And their willingness to hold a higher line earlier in sequences. This is honestly the brilliance of Luis Enrique. Luis Enrique is honestly consolidating his potential play ideology through the last man and not punishing mistakes. What in this situation I'm trying to basically say is that Chevalier is going to be going into PSG to start the play. He is going to be press resistant, therefore creating a mismatch in every situation. Just like how Bayern used Neuer, just like how Inter used Andre Onana in that Champions League going to the final season. That is what Luis Enrique wants to do with Chevalier. And then you have to look at the Marquinhos leadership equilibrium. Publicly honoring Donnarumma while endorsing the coach's calls signals a veteran leadership, a group that is aligned with the manager's macro plan. It is subtle, but it is vital to the dressing room to see that the machine is still moving, controlling the egos. He honestly appreciates Donnarumma, but also in the same breath shout out and says, we are still behind the manager. And that is brilliant. That is right there leadership that you can't buy. And then we have to also then look at the French identity, recalibration of Paris Saint-Germain. Moving a young French #1 goalkeeper of the year, by the way, isn't just tactical. There is a rebranding, there is a branding project being domestic talent. After years of superstars import coming from Barcelona, Argentina, Brazil in Neymar, what PSG are focused on is talents from France. It plays with the fans. It gives the federation a lot of good optics and the future recruitment, basically telling the French Football Federation that if you want to be a talented footballer, coming to PSG is the way to go. And this move is what basically enhances that thought process. And then you also have to look at the wage architecture and the amortization of what the wage bill is right now. Swapping an expensive, soon to be out of contract #1 for a younger asset on a fresh deal helps stabilize the wage bill and improves the medium-term squad cost structure. Even if the short-term sporting trade feels a little bit harsh, this particular move basically makes them understand, because Donnarumma was one of the highest paid players in PSG. And your goalkeeper should not be that. He should not be the most or one of the most highest paid, even though he is one of the best players in the squad. The truth about it is very hard to single person that is the reason or that should be the way things are flowing. You understand? It is going to be very hard. Now the Italian national team shockwaves. He is Italy's captain and the locker room pillar. An extended bench spell or a wrong fit would reverberate through the Azzurri cycle. A City-type platform, by contrast, could supercharge his status heading into major tournaments. One thing that is absolutely crazy to think about right now is that if Donnarumma sits on the bench for an entire year,